Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to game number 3 of our best of 3 series between Jim Bob the Mighty and Pollina. Jim Bob does manage to pull back on a rather difficult map in game number 2 to bring this series to its 1-1 scoreline. Both players dropping expansive, lots of shipping costs, but Jim Bob with his lead picks up a patent lab and manages to solidly secure the game. Philithanic's still here with us, doing some more commentary. I'm sure he's had a good chance to look at this map.
Right, so first thing I noticed is there's a lot of green prices pretty much across the board here. Half of the resources are starting double. Looking at the map itself, a lot better map. There are multiple places you could found, which is why neither player is founding. There is a decent robot spot with a combo tile to the east of the colony. There are a couple potential scavenger founds with a high carbon next to a low. You could do something with this iron in the north. It's not that far from this water patch to the west of Houston. Basically, lots of options. Jim Bob instead deciding to go for a scientific found.
Has been founded.
That is a rather strange scientific location. We'll have to see how it goes. Going for double steel and an aluminum, which is understandable, but I don't know if it's actually the correct call at HQ1 this game in particular. Now, with the high iron price, it should work out, I think. Very, very important that this is a combo tile, because the aluminum might not end up being all that worthwhile up against the robotic Pollina. Both players pulling in quite a bit of cash right now with these expensive prices. Have to see who gets to HQ2 first, but it should be Jim Bob.
Pollina has gone for the more traditional found, going for a robot. However, she put her steel mills next to a metal mine, meaning everything can be shut down with one power surge. Now, she does benefit that she's founding second. The black market is open for her and not quite yet for Jim Bob. She has the upgrade. I'm not sure why she's not taking it. There she goes.
Yeah, potentially just thinking things through a little bit. Jim Bob does go ahead and get upgraded. There's an individual steel mill coming down, potentially going with the idea that you keep your steel split so you can't be shut down all at once, although in this circumstance, with power surges being the primary tool to shut things down, and you as a scientific player, I don't know if I'd be quite so concerned about it, but we'll see how it goes for him moving forward. Solar condensers are going to be what Pollina drops, and we do see a power surge land on the previously mentioned weak point, where all the iron and steel can be knocked out simultaneously.
Pollina's going into interesting with a second triangle. 2 solar condensers, which each make 97, well, when it's daytime and the sun's out. And then a single black magic chemical refinery, which isn't doing anything because Pollina doesn't have enough money to buy fuel.
Yeah, needs to sell down those chems to keep that chem refinery online. It is making a profit, so it can power itself, and we are going to see those go ahead and turn on. For now, both players, interestingly enough, I was wondering if this would happen. It has. Both players have passed on power for the time being. I thought there was the potential for Pollina in particular, who has almost no debt at the moment, to go into power at HQ2, see if you can benefit from the fact that power started at 80. Both of you are steel users, and there are offices at the colony. That hasn't been what happened yet, though. Both players going to need to be paying attention to this high power price and make sure to compensate for it. Jim Bob's still showing no interest in such a play for the time being.
Perhaps that explains Pollina's move into the solar condenser. She just sold down her carbon, so what I was going to say is irrelevant. I was going to suggest that maybe she's holding...
for wind turbines.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, nope, not the case.
Yeah, she does have a pretty decent wind turbine location close by. Can't really easily link them up to the colony itself, but on the cliffs just to the west could certainly be made to work. Claim auction almost slipped by for 5k, but Jim Bob goes ahead, keeps that auction moving forward, and he's doing a lot of thinking and transitioning, it seems, about what to do with these water tiles he's managed to claim.
Right, Pollina has allowed Jim Bob to claim the best water tiles. There's only one medium water tile left in this water patch. The rest of the water just a couple mediums. Okay, Pollina does have one high I didn't notice, although
Yep,
it is
high with a couple medium adjacencies. It's going to be more than enough for a robot, I would say, this game.
it is losing a lot of, well, that's, I think,
That's that power cost attached to it.
yes.
All that power shipping in particular for a robot. Might want to consider turning it off before too long if you're thinking about going into power and making some money this game. Although after a 28k claim auction, I don't know if that's going to happen. Alright, that does look like a wind turbine coming down for Pollina, so we are going to move into some power. We'll have to see exactly what happens with it though, because we're moving up quickly to $300 a second. Jim Bob just in one solar panel, heading into a second in just a moment here. Okay, Pollina's got a power surge saved up for these, by the way, so we'll have to see if she targets those or if she wants to knock out the food or solar condensers. Oh, even scrapping out of steel. Interesting move from Jim Bob.
Steel's still 80.
The black market is
And
online.
he's...
Oh, back into it.
Okay, Jim Bob's overthinking right now his options. I think getting out of a market, moving back into the market. Pollina does finally hit HQ3. She's been struggling a little bit on 2 for quite a while. Deciding to use that power surge on Jim Bob's water resources and solar condensers over here.
It's alright. It does some damage. I'm not sure if it was the best move available, but it certainly does work. Tries to shut down that money making for some time. I would have liked to see maybe a bit more focus on mutinies rather than power surges this game against a scientific opponent in particular. You can do a surprising amount of damage and make a lot of money with mutinies on things like these greenhouse farms and solar panels, but not going to happen just yet. Oh, well, Pollina catches a mutiny anyway. Bounces off that goon squad quite nicely. Spy's only 3k, bit of an inexcusable mistake that we've seen a lot of players make this particular
Great.
tournament.
Pollina making the same... Well, does Jim Bob have a goon squad? No,
Doesn't
Jim
have a
Bob
goon
does
squad
not.
bought up,
Okay,
so it's
not
all
a
right.
mistake.
Nope.
Good. Pollina keeping a better eye on Jim Bob's black market purchases than I am.
Is available for auction.
Fair. Well, Mutiny finally does go ahead and land on the wind turbine of Pollina's. However, Pollina should have a cooldown come up in about 16 seconds. Can easily take that back if she'd like. I would expect that to be the move, although I'm not 100% sure. Personally, I'm always a bit scared when power's up at $343 a second.
Right, both players are pulling in a equal amount of power with one wind turbine, one solar panel each. This geotherm tile will be interesting to see how high it goes. 20,000. Now it will probably will pay for itself as power is $300 and isn't showing any signs of rapidly decreasing. But this does give Pollina another attack vector into Jim Bob's power.
Absolutely does. A power surge would be a decent option on the geotherm before... Pollina knows Jim Bob doesn't have a cooldown right now, or likely doesn't. As the mutiny had come through, she is just going to simply mutiny back her own power. That's an acceptable decision, but there was an opportunity here where your opponent very likely doesn't have a cooldown. You can know that he hasn't purchased a goon squad yet, and potentially attempt to get in on this geotherm before it comes online. Would have been an interesting move, not what we're going to see here today. Well, both players are actually solidly in power and managing to pay down their debt, so it looks like things aren't going to go too out of control.
Jim Bob has moved into two very weak wind turbines, each with a adjacency making 0.6 a second.
Now what this has done, because Pollina's power has been pretty efficient with just a couple of wind turbines and all these solar condensers and farms down rather than potentially significant power consumers, combined with a couple mutinies here and there, Pollina has managed to keep debt in check while continuing to make money. Jim Bob, on the other hand, has had to spend a lot of the cash he's been pulling in trying to get down this less efficient power that hasn't been staying online, is coming online a little late in the case of the geotherm, so he's not as quick to move through upgrades, and Pollina has managed to pull ahead on those to HQ4 for the moment, the place you want to be as a robot.
Right, I think Jim Bob's was too aggressive in these transitions. Like right now, if I were Jim Bob, I'd really want those
The
two
black
windmills to be
market is
steel
open for
milled.
business.
Steel is 163. That is the true price of steel, and Jim Bob has no steel.
Yeah, about $100,000 for him to upgrade at current prices right now. No steel, no aluminum. Aluminum up at 153. Pollina being the only person pulling in aluminum for the time being. Jim Bob is going to want to move out of these solar panels and back into that before too terribly long, I'd imagine. But he is about to start making money from this ridiculous commitment to power. Have to see if he can just pull through on that. He's going to need a lot of it to be able to keep upgrading.
Right, he will be making power money in 6.5 seconds. And the power
Aluminum
price
oxygen.
is still 186 right now, although rapidly falling, so he'll make quite a decent amount of power money.
He will, but my big concern about it is the fact that no matter how much money you make, that does not stop these prices from being absurdly high in the number of resources you require to actually upgrade. I mean, 114,000 is what he would need to press that button at this moment, and I don't know if he's going to pull that much in.
No, he
on
will
this
not.
Power.
He will not pull that much in from power. Power's dropping too rapidly, especially now that all three of Pollina's windmills are online.
Yeah,
The
quite
power
effectively
price-
pumping away, and she does have them goon squatted once again. Jim Bob not going to be able to do a whole lot about that at all.
Pollina is sitting on a sizable cash and
Pirates.
a head
I hate
H-quarters
those filthy
upgrade
bandits.
lead right now.
All right.
Is
Nice pirates as well, down on some of this food, fuel, and oxygen. It's going to come down to a little bit of luck what these hit for how profitable they are, but take the black market hits when you can get them, and definitely a scientific's separated production is going to be a place to hit.
got a 2/3 chance of getting something valuable and a 1/3 chance of getting something not valuable. I'd say it's worth the risk.
Even better than that with oxygen being so slow to produce, so I agree with you. I think it's going to be a solid move. Oh, Metal Mine gets taken away by Jim Bob with that mutiny. I like that move. It's going to take a while for it to pay off as it's got a lot of shipping to do, but hey, it'll work out long term. That's a 240 aluminum in your favor and not toward your opponent.
Yes, Jim Bob has moved out of all that extra power now that power is 50 and falling. He's moved into his setup from HQ 1 and 2 to the split steel mills, although he's selling down steel instead of
I think he
saving it
needs
up.
to actually. He needs cash and he needs to make sure Pollina doesn't get cash. All right, selling down steel forced Pollina to go ahead and sell it down. Jim Bob could start looking at an upgrade, but I think it would be a mistake if he did. Pollina's actually getting very close to potentially being able to end this game.
Right,
A robotics HQ has been
She's just going to
upgraded.
upgrade instead. Well, HQ5 to HQ3 is hard to argue with.
no, especially with a decent amount of her money makers with that steel offline. Might as well take that upgrade while you can, while it's cheap. Go into some more tiles that make
Let
you
the
money.
bidding begin.
Yeah, and there is a really clear path forward to make cash this game. Go ahead, pick up some silicon. That's going to let you quite easily move into the valuable glass. Colony did eventually choose to add some warehouses, so that price has been moving up swiftly, and Pollina should have some good options for what to do in the late game to look at closing this out, considering Jim Bob's still down at HQ3. Pollina has a lot of time to play around, and I wouldn't mind seeing a hacker array to see if we can get this done here and now before Jim Bob can even make it up to 5.
Thinking Machines auction right now is intriguing. We're only sold 5 and the Offworld prices are not that high. The highest launch 400 making 22k profit. But Jim Bob is going for any advantage he can get. He's thinking if the game lasts long enough, at least I'll have Thinking Machines, maybe I can do something with it.
Absolutely, and I think Thinking Machines is actually all right. Mutinies have gotten a bit on the pricier side, but there was the opportunity here since Jim Bob is struggling for steel a little bit more, needs that steel to upgrade in particular. There was the opportunity to start mutinying away these steel mills from your scientific
Now,
opponent.
this is a risky upgrade.
Oh, it is a bit of a risky upgrade. Pollina's sitting on a lot of cash right now. If she goes ahead and goes for this, I don't know if Jim Bob's going to be able to stop it, but he is still pulling in quite a bit of cash off these steel mills.
This will be close. Jim Bob needs another 40k. Pollina has another... Well, she needs to sell out of resources that she's sitting on. Continuing to do that.
Yeah, canceled the hacker raid to try and pull in as many resources as possible. Meanwhile, Jim Bob, he still has a little bit of construction going on, and a lot of his resources are separated from his base. He needs those to fly in and save him. I don't think it's going to happen in time, though. 2 seconds.
2-1, and Pollina takes it.
Those upgrades, they'll get you every time. It was 4 instead of 5 this time, but you need to be aware of how much cash your opponent is pulling in, and prices that high, an upgrade was a very serious risk to Jim Bob's game, and it's not going to work out for him. Oh boy, just another one of those losses. I don't know. Majority buys immediately after upgrades. You don't see them too often, but they kind of feel pretty bad every single time when you're the victim of that kind of play.
They do. They do. I mean, Jim Bob really, what he had to do was, it's really painful, but buy into his stock, then take the upgrade. That way, even if Pollina could do it, at least the optics make it look like she would have a harder time doing it, that maybe she chooses not to go for that majority buyout. But yeah, every second you're sitting back at HQ3 up against an HQ5, that upgrade button looks very, very tempting.
Looks necessary, very tempting indeed. But I think a lot of that was just maybe a mismanagement of power. I did not like Jim Bob's HQ3 claims in particular after all that water. Pollina had already shown pretty much that she was going to let you have your water by taking the high water off to the west. Very unlikely she's going to get in your way with all this water. Just unnecessary to claim this many water tiles. And he had to rotate out of his valuable tiles in order to move into that power in the first place. Just not quite thinking all the way through what's going to be necessary at 3 with these offices at the colony, and it ends up costing the game.
Yes, that... You can tell rotating out of aluminum was very painful. Jim Bob spent 106k on aluminum, his biggest money sink, which is usually not a resource you see players spending all their money on.
It barely edged out steel at 101,000 in particular. Oh man.
Usually you only see the aluminum that high when it is a single aluminum patch and somebody decides to squash all of it with an expansive.
Now, Jim Bob did manage to make a large amount of money in aluminum. I believe mostly because Pollina not quite selling out of it fast enough. She had a small stockpile at some point, and maybe that mutiny in particular doing so much work for Jim Bob. He was able to produce a ton of aluminum off the back of that Pollina did not get. He did end up selling quite a lot of it, but it wasn't enough at the end of the game. Pollina's just got too much cash on hand to have to care.
Right. Yeah, those Jim Bob for the longest time in that game with that early power surge on Pollina's steel mills definitely had the advantage, had the HQ advantage, had the cash advantage, and then, like you said, those weird HQ3 transitions, the weird claim tiles. They allowed Pollina to vault from 1 HQ behind to 1 HQ ahead, and he kind of fell out of contention right there. Wasn't able to catch up ever since.
Certainly did. Well, once again, difficult to find anything else to discuss about that one. It was pretty cut and dry with just those HQ level 3 difficulties. I mean, even at the end of the day, he did manage to get back into those upgrade resources that were needed, but too little too late.
As Jim does mention on chat that he put a ton of money into aluminum during the aluminum short, which I must have missed that. Thinking
a lot
about
of that
something else.
would have made sense with how much was bought and how much was sold. Still only pulled in about 20k total from the resource, though. And definitely lost money in steel, unlike Pollina, who was successfully profiting in that market. I'm kind of curious as well. Yeah, Jim Bob purchased 82,000 fuel and sold 40,000 fuel. Now, the 82k was just pure debt, but considering he was making money in power, how much more actual cash could he have made had this debt not been such a concern? And realistically, all of that comes back to one thing we haven't really discussed since it happened, which is that strange HQ1 scientific found.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a strange spot. It's one that sort of requires you to go for a teleportation rush or something like that, just so you have the chance to be competitive in the long run, and power crept up so high that Jim Bob didn't think he could spare any tiles for the necessary patent lab to make his found work.
Yeah, unable to get to the patent lab means you definitely aren't going to make it work, and maybe just an overcommitment to using these tiles before the patent lab and teleportation was available. All kinds of little things in there that do add up to Pollina's majority buy.